Lee Hyun sat in the back corner of the combat theory classroom, his dark eyes focused on the holographic display showing battle formations from the last Galactic War. Around him, cadets from dozens of different worlds filled the tiered seats, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors, sizes, and shapes that would have amazed anyone from old Earth. But Hyun had grown used to this diversity over his 3 years at the Galactic Military Academy on Nexus Prime. The instructor, Commander Zethkar, stood nearly 8 feet tall with his Vorthak heritage showing in every line of his muscular, gray-scaled body. His forearms moved gracefully as he manipulated the holographic controls, showing how the Allied forces had used superior positioning to defeat a numerically larger enemy fleet. His voice carried easily through the amphitheater, a deep rumble that demanded attention from every species present. "Notice how the Terran fleet positioned themselves here," Zethkar said, highlighting a section of the display with one clawed finger. "Humans lack the raw physical power of Krillians, or the technological superiority of the Silicon Collective, but they excel at strategic thinking and support operations. They used their smaller, more maneuverable ships to create communication, relays and supply lines while the main assault was carried out by our stronger allies." Hyun kept his expression neutral, though something flickered behind his eyes. This was the standard narrative taught throughout the academy. Humans were clever but weak, useful for logistics and planning, but not for direct combat. It was a story he had heard in dozens of classes over the years, and one that his test scores seemed to support. In the front rows, the elite cadets nodded approvingly at the commander's words. Velthar, the largest of the Krillian students, stretched his 7-foot frame and flexed his naturally armored shoulders. His reptilian features showed obvious satisfaction at being reminded of his species' combat superiority. Next to him sat Morden, whose 4 muscular arms could each lift more than most beings could manage with their entire bodies. The hexapods' compound eyes glittered with confidence. Behind them, Quinra's crystalline form caught and refracted the light from the holographic display. The silicon being's ability to phase through solid matter made her nearly untouchable in combat simulations, a fact she never let anyone forget. These 3, along with their circle of elite friends, consistently ranked at the top of every combat assessment. When the class ended, Hyun gathered his materials slowly, waiting for the rush of larger, faster students to clear the aisles before making his way toward the exit. He had learned early in his academy career that it was easier to avoid the crush than to try to push through beings who could accidentally injure him with a careless bump. "Hyun, wait up," called a familiar voice. Park Mina hurried down the steps, her communications equipment bag bouncing against her hip. She was one of only 12 humans in their year, specializing in multi-species communication protocols rather than direct combat training. "Another inspiring lecture about human limitations," she said quietly as they walked together down the corridor. Her voice carried just a hint of sarcasm that she was careful to keep from reaching alien ears. "Commander Zethkar is not wrong about our fleet strategies," Hyun replied in his usual calm tone. "Humans did provide excellent support during the war." Mina studied her friend's profile as they walked. After 3 years of friendship, she had learned to read the subtle signs that others missed. The slight tension around his eyes, the way his hands remained perfectly still at his sides instead of swinging naturally. These tiny details told her that Hyun was thinking about something much deeper than fleet formations and support roles. They passed through the main academy plaza, where students from various worlds gathered in informal groups. The Krillians dominated one area with their imposing size and loud voices, while the more delicate species clustered in quieter corners. Humans, being neither the strongest nor the most technologically advanced, often found themselves scattered among different groups or forming their own small circles. "Simulation scores came out today," Mina said as they approached the dormitory complex. "You want to guess where you ranked?" Hyun shrugged. "Bottom third, as usual." 27th out, of 43 in your combat group, she confirmed. "Right behind Kassira from Tau Ceti, and she only has one functioning arm after that training accident last month." They entered the quieter corridors of the human dormitory wing. The academy segregated living spaces by species for practical reasons. Atmospheric requirements, dietary needs, and sleep cycles varied dramatically between worlds. It also meant that the human students had privacy to speak more freely about their experiences. The thing is, Mina continued, settling into a chair in the common area, I have been watching the simulation recordings. Everyone has access to them, for study purposes, you know. I have watched your sessions dozens of times. Hyun sat across from her, his expression unchanged but his attention sharpening slightly. And what did you observe? You lose in the simulations, but you never actually fail to accomplish objectives. In that urban combat scenario last week, you were marked down for taking too long to clear the building. But you were the only cadet who found and secured all the civilian targets without any casualties. Belthar finished faster, but he missed 2 civilians and would have gotten them killed in a real situation. She leaned forward, lowering her voice even though they were alone. In the spaceboarding exercise, you ranked low for taking damage to your suit. But the damage happened because you were shielding Cadet Rithan when her species-specific equipment malfunctioned. If that had been real, you would have saved her life. Hyun was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the alien skyline of Nexus Prime. 3 moons hung in the purple twilight sky, and ships moved like tiny stars between the towering spires of the capital city. The simulations are designed to test specific skills, he said finally. Speed, aggression, individual achievement. Real combat is different. That is exactly what I mean, Mina said, excitement creeping into her voice. You fight like the situation is real even in simulations. Everyone else fights like they are being graded. Before Hyun could respond, loud voices echoed from the corridor outside. Through the transparent wall they could see Velthar and his group of elite cadets walking past, their conversation easily audible. The human section is so quiet, Mordun was saying, his translated voice carrying clearly. Do they even train for combat, or do they just study supply chain management? I heard they have special modified equipment because they break so easily, added Skrita, the avian cadet's wings rustling with amusement. Soft bones, soft muscles, soft minds. Velthar's laugh was like rocks grinding together. At least, they are useful for something. When we graduate to real military service, we will need someone to handle communications and logistics while the real warriors fight. The group moved past, their voices fading down the corridor. Mina's face had darkened with anger, but Hyun remained perfectly calm, though something indefinable had changed in his posture. Does that kind of talk not bother you? Mina asked. Why should it bother me? Hyun replied. Their opinions do not change reality. And what is reality exactly? Hyun stood up, moving to the window where he could see the Academy's training complex in the distance. Lights were on in the main combat dome where advanced students often practiced late into the evening. Reality is that we are all here to learn. Some lessons can only be taught when the stakes are real. Mina joined him at the window, studying his reflection in the glass. There was something in his eyes that she had seen before, usually right. Before he did something that surprised everyone, including their instructors. It was a look of someone who was calculating possibilities and outcomes far beyond what others could see. Tomorrow is the final combat assessment, she said. Team, exercises in the main dome. I know. You will be on Team Beta with the lower-ranked cadets. Velthar and his friends are all on Team Alpha. I know that too. They are going to try to embarrass you. Make an example of the weak humans in front of the whole academy. Hyun turned from the window, and for just a moment, Mina saw something in his expression that made her understand why apex predators from 100 worlds instinctively avoided eye contact with humans. It was gone so quickly she almost thought she had imagined it. Let them try, he said quietly, and walked toward his room, leaving Mina alone with the growing certainty that tomorrow's exercise was going to be nothing like anyone expected. The main combat dome hummed with energy as dozens of cadets filed into their designated areas. The massive structure could simulate any environment from scorching deserts to frozen wastelands, from dense jungles to zero-gravity asteroid fields. Today it was configured as an urban warfare zone, complete with multi-story buildings, narrow alleys, and scattered debris. that could provide cover or create obstacles. Hyun checked his equipment one final time, running through the standard loadout that every cadet received for team combat exercises: plasma rifle, sidearm, tactical gear, and a suit of light armor that would protect against training weapons while still allowing the sting of hits to register. Everything seemed normal, though he noticed his rifle felt slightly heavier than usual. Around the preparation area, Team Beta gathered with the nervous energy of cadets who knew they were expected to lose. Besides Hyun, the team included Rithan, a gentle Pacifican whose species had only recently joined the Galactic Alliance; Dexmore, a young insectoid who was brilliant at technical solutions but struggled with aggressive tactics; Nalafri, an Ituosatum amphibious being from the water worlds whose reflexes were excellent, but whose confidence had been shattered by months of poor performance, and two others whose combat scores barely qualified them for the exercise. In contrast, Team Alpha radiated confidence. Velthar stood at their center like a general addressing his troops, his scaled hide gleaming under the dome's artificial lighting. Morden flexed all four arms while checking his weapon, the motion casual but clearly intended to intimidate anyone watching. Quinra's crystalline form shimmered as she tested her phasing ability, briefly becoming translucent before solidifying. Again, Skrita's wings spread and folded in the aerial equivalent of stretching, while Zurgoth and Beltar, two more of the Academy's top-rated fighters, completed their intimidating lineup. Commander Zethkar's voice echoed through the dome's communication system as he addressed both teams and the hundreds of spectators watching from the observation galleries above. This exercise will test your ability to work as coordinated units under pressure. Team Alpha's objective is to capture and hold the Central Plaza for 15 minutes. Team Beta's objective is to prevent this capture by any means necessary. Training weapons are set to maximum non-lethal settings. Medical teams are standing by. What the commander did not announce, because he did not know, was that a critical malfunction had occurred in the dome's safety systems 12 minutes earlier. A cascade failure in the weapon control network had switched all training weapons from simulation mode to full combat effectiveness. The same energy blasts that would normally cause nothing more than a painful shock and a scoring mark were now capable of causing serious injury or death. The malfunction had been subtle, affecting only the weapon output calibration while leaving all other systems apparently normal. Warning lights that should have activated remained dark, and status displays continued to show green across all boards. Even the automated safety monitors registered nothing unusual, their sensors fooled by the sophisticated nature of the system. Failure. Team Beta took their starting positions at the perimeter of the simulated urban zone, while Team Alpha gathered at the central plaza they were meant to defend. The exercise parameters seemed straightforward: a basic attack and defend, scenario that favored the stronger, more aggressive team. Most of the Academy instructors expected the exercise to last less than 10 minutes, with Team Alpha's superior fighters quickly overwhelming their weaker opponents. "Begin combat exercise," Commander Zethkar announced, and immediately the dome erupted into action. Team Alpha spread out with practiced efficiency, each member taking positions that maximized their natural advantages. Velthar anchored their defensive line with his imposing size and natural armor, while Morden's forearms allowed him to operate multiple weapon systems simultaneously. Quinra used her phasing ability to scout ahead, becoming incorporeal to pass through walls and gather intelligence on Team Beta's approach. Team Beta moved more cautiously, with Hyun somehow managing to coordinate their advance, despite having no official leadership role. He guided Rithan to positions where her species' natural camouflage abilities would be most effective, and helped Dexmore identify technical solutions to overcome the defensive obstacles. His quiet suggestions and subtle hand signals seemed to give the weaker team a coherence that surprised the watching instructors. The first engagement came when Skrita spotted Nalafri attempting to flank around the eastern approach. The avian cadet swooped down with precision, her talons extending, as she fired multiple shots from her aerial position. The energy blast that should have been harmless training pulses instead tore through the air with lethal intensity, scarring the simulated concrete walls and sending up showers of sparks. Nalafri threw herself behind cover just as one of the shots passed through the space where her head had been a split second earlier. The amphibious cadet's natural reflexes had saved her life, though she had no way of knowing how close death had actually come. She returned fire, her own weapon sending out energy bursts that would have been fatal if they had found their target. "Something feels different about the weapons today," Rethan whispered into her communication device as she watched the exercise unfold from her concealed position. Hyun's voice came back over the team channel, calm but with an edge that had not been there during previous exercises. "Stay alert. Trust your instincts and keep to cover." The pattern of the battle shifted as Team Beta proved far more effective than anyone had expected. Instead of making the predictable frontal assault that would have played to Team Alpha's strengths, they began a systematic campaign that targeted their opponents' overconfidence. Dexmore disabled several defensive systems using technical knowledge that the elite fighters had never bothered to learn, while the supposedly weaker cadets used terrain and timing to turn Team Alpha's aggression against them. Within minutes, Team Beta had eliminated 3 of Team Alpha's members through precise coordinated attacks that left the elite fighters stunned. Skrita lay motionless after Nalafri's shot had caught her during a dive. The energy blast that should have been a minor scoring hit instead, sending the avian cadet crashing unconscious to the ground. Zurgoth and Beltar had been caught in a crossfire that, under normal circumstances, would have meant temporary elimination from the exercise but no real harm. Instead, both were down and unmoving, their armor smoking from energy impacts. In the observation galleries, instructors began to murmur among themselves. This was not how the exercise was supposed to unfold, and the intensity of the weapons fire visible on their monitors was concerning several of the more experienced officers. Team Alpha's remaining members, Velthar, Moradin, and Quinra, found themselves backed into the central plaza, their defensive positions compromised and their numerical advantage eliminated. The exercise had become something none of them had experienced before. Actual combat where mistakes had real consequences. "This is impossible," Morden snarled, his forearms working frantically to reload his weapons while scanning for targets. "These weaklings cannot be defeating us. The weapons are different somehow," Quinra observed, her crystalline form flickering between solid and incorporeal states as she tried to scout their opponents' positions. "The energy readings are much higher than normal training levels." Velthar's reptilian features twisted with rage and disbelief. 3 years of academy training had taught him that physical superiority translated directly to combat effectiveness, and the possibility that he and his elite teammates could lose to beings he considered inherently inferior was something his worldview could not accept. "Enough of this," he growled, activating his communication system to broadcast on all channels, including those monitored by the instructors and spectators. "If these soft skins want to play games, we will show them what real warriors can do." What happened next would be analyzed and debated for months afterward. Instead of continuing the structured exercise, Team Alpha's remaining members made a decision that transformed a training scenario into something far more dangerous. They abandoned their defensive positions and began an aggressive sweep of the urban zone, not to win the exercise according to its stated parameters, but to hunt down and eliminate every member of Team Beta in a display of dominance that would restore their damaged pride. The 3 elite fighters moved with deadly coordination, their natural advantages working perfectly together. Morden's strength allowed him to tear through barriers and cover that Team Beta had been using for protection. Quinra's phasing ability made her nearly impossible to target, while allowing her to attack from unexpected angles. Velthar's armored hide and imposing size made him nearly unstoppable in direct confrontation. One by one, Team Beta's members fell to this coordinated assault. Rithan was caught in the open when Morden tore through the wall she had been hiding behind. The energy blast that took her down, leaving her armor cracked and smoking. Dexmore's technical brilliance could not save him when Quinra phased through his defensive barriers and attacked from within his supposedly secure position. The other Team Beta members lasted mere seconds against opponents who were no longer following the rules of engagement. Soon only Hyun remained. He stood alone in the center of the word zero had not yet finished echoing through the dome when Hyun exploded into motion. Every assumption about human physical limitations, every belief about the natural order of galactic species hierarchy. Every confident prediction about the outcome of this encounter was shattered in the space of 5 heartbeats. In the first breath, Hyun dropped into a crouch so low and so fast that the energy blasts from all 3 opponents passed harmlessly over his head. But he was not simply avoiding their attack. He was moving with a purpose that none of the watchers could comprehend until it was already complete. His right leg swept out in a perfect arc that caught Velthar's ankles at precisely the moment when the Krillion's weight was committed to his forward attack stance. The 7-foot reptilian warrior, confident in his superior size and natural armor, had not expected any resistance from the crouching human figure. His massive frame toppled sideways, and in the split second when his balance was destroyed, Hyun's left hand moved with surgical precision. The motion was so economical and so perfectly timed that most observers missed it entirely. One moment, Velthar held his weapon. The next moment, the plasma rifle was spinning through the air toward Hyun's waiting grasp. In the second breath, Hyun caught Velthar's rifle without looking at it, his eyes already tracking the 4-armed form of Mordun, who was pivoting to adjust his aim. The hexapod's superior reaction time should have given him the advantage, and his 4-armed configuration allowed him to maintain weapon control even while changing targets. But Hyun was no longer where Mordun expected him to be. The human had rolled forward and to the side, using Velthar's falling body as both a shield and a launching point. The stolen rifle came up in a fluid motion, and the energy blast that erupted from its muzzle was aimed not at Mordun's center mass, where his natural armor was thickest, but at the vulnerable joint where his upper left arm connected to his torso. The precision was surgical, the timing was perfect, and the result was that the hexapod's weapon coordination was instantly compromised as his arm went numb and lifeless. The shot that should have been a harmless training pulse instead sent Mordun crashing to the ground, his remaining 3 arms unable to compensate for the sudden loss of balance. Steam rose from the point of impact where the energy blast had overloaded his armor's protective systems. In the third breath, Hyun was already moving again, his body coiling like a spring as he launched himself upward and forward. Quinra had begun to phase, her crystalline form becoming translucent as she attempted to use her species' greatest advantage. In normal circumstances, this would have made her untouchable, allowing her to attack without fear of retaliation, but Hyun had somehow anticipated this exact response. Instead of trying to shoot at a target that was becoming incorporeal, he threw himself directly at her phasing form, his arms extending to make contact just as her phase transition reached its middle point. Quinra's startled cry echoed through the dome as she discovered something that no instructor had ever taught her. Phasing required complete mental focus, and it could be disrupted by direct physical contact at precisely the right moment. Her form solidified involuntarily as Hyun's momentum carried them both to the ground, but he was already twisting away from her, his right hand closing around the handle of her crystalline blade, even as they fell. The weapon was designed for her species' unique grip and energy patterns, but Hyun's fingers adapted to its alien configuration with disturbing ease. In the fourth breath, Hyun was back on his feet, and the crystalline blade left his hand in a throw that defied every expectation about human strength and accuracy. Skrita had recovered consciousness and was attempting to rejoin the fight, her wings carrying her in a diving attack pattern that should have been impossible to predict or counter. The blade caught her in mid-flight with such precision that it seemed like the avian cadet had deliberately flown into its path. The crystalline edge, designed to cut through the toughest materials in the galaxy, sliced through her flight feathers and sent her tumbling from the air in a controlled crash that left her unconscious but alive. The throw had been calculated to disable rather than kill, requiring an understanding of alien anatomy that should have taken years to master. But the blade throw had been only half of Hyun's fourth breath action. Even as the weapon spun through the air toward its target, his left foot was already moving in a kick that sent Zurgoth's recovered weapon skittering across the plaza floor. The alien warrior had been attempting to line up a shot from the ground where he had fallen earlier, but Hyun's peripheral awareness had tracked his movement without conscious thought. In the fifth breath, the final 2 opponents made their coordinated attack. Zurgoth and Beltar had recovered enough to attempt a synchronized assault, their weapons trained on Hyun from opposite sides of the plaza. Their plan was tactically sound. Even if he could dodge one shot, he could not possibly avoid attacks from two different angles simultaneously. They were correct about the impossibility of dodging both attacks, but they had made a fundamental error in their assumptions about human combat capabilities. Hyun did not try to dodge. Instead, he moved forward, directly toward the point where their firing lines would intersect, and did something that would be debated in military academies for generations to come. He used their own coordination against them. By positioning himself at precisely the right point and timing his movement perfectly, he caused both attackers to hesitate for a fraction of a second, each afraid of hitting the other with crossfire. That fraction of a second was all he needed. His left hand closed around a piece of debris from Mordun's earlier impact, and his right hand simultaneously grabbed Quinra's fallen secondary weapon. The debris flew at Zergoth's face with such force and accuracy that the warrior instinctively flinched backward, his shot going wide. The energy weapon in Hyun's right hand sent a bolt directly at Beltar's weapon, not at the warrior himself, but at the power coupling that fed energy to his rifle. The overloaded coupling exploded in Beltar's hands, the feedback surge traveling through his armor's systems and rendering him unconscious before he could understand what had happened. Zergoth's wild shot, thrown off by the debris strike, ricocheted off the plaza's synthetic stone floor and struck the dome wall with enough force to crack the supposedly indestructible barrier material. 5 breaths, 6 elite warriors from different worlds, each trained in their species' most effective combat techniques, each confident in their natural advantages over the supposedly weak human. All of them down, their weapons scattered, their pride shattered, along with their bodies. The dome fell silent except for the hum of energy weapons powering down and the whisper of air circulation systems. In the observation galleries, hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The display screens that tracked combat performance showed readings that the computer systems flagged as errors. No individual cadet should have been capable of the speed, precision, and tactical awareness that had just been demonstrated. Hyun stood in the center of the plaza, surrounded by the fallen forms of his opponents, breathing normally. Despite having just performed what amounted to a perfect combat sequence, his uniform was barely disturbed, his weapon grip was relaxed, and his expression showed nothing more than quiet alertness as he waited for the exercise conclusion signal. In the galleries, Park Mina found that she had been holding her breath throughout the entire sequence. Around her, cadets who had spent 3 years dismissing humans as weak support species were reassessing every assumption they had ever made about the quiet beings from the third planet of Sol system. Commander Zethkar's voice finally broke the silence, though his usual commanding tone was replaced by something that might have been uncertainty. Exercise concluded. Medical teams to the combat zone immediately, all weapons safed and secured. As medical personnel rushed onto the plaza floor, several of the alien instructors began urgent conversations about what they had just observed. The combat sequence had been recorded from dozens of angles, but even with perfect video documentation, many of the movements had been too fast for real-time analysis. Down on the plaza floor, Hyun helped the medical teams check on his fallen opponents, his manner calm and professional as he provided accurate assessments of their conditions. Velthar was conscious but dazed, his pride more injured than his body. Morden would need treatment for the nerve damage in his arm but would recover fully. The others were unconscious but stable, their injuries serious enough to require medical attention but not life-threatening. "How did you move so fast?" Velthar asked weakly as medics helped him into a hover stretcher. His reptilian eyes showed confusion more than anger now. "Your species is not supposed to be capable of such speed." Hyun met his gaze calmly. "I moved at normal speed. You moved slowly. That is impossible. Our reflexes are superior to yours by every measure. Your reflexes are faster," Hyun agreed quietly. "But reflexes are not the same thing as awareness. You reacted to what you saw. I acted on what I knew would happen." Before Velthar could ask what that meant, the medical team was carrying him away for treatment, leaving Hyun. The Academy Medical Center had never seen such focused attention on routine injury treatment. Every bed in the trauma bay was occupied by members of Team Alpha, while crowds of instructors, medical staff, and senior cadets gathered around monitoring stations to review the combat footage for the 100th time since the exercise had ended 3 hours earlier. Dr. Yethmore, the facility's chief medical officer, moved between patients with the methodical precision that had made her one of the most respected physicians in the galactic medical community. Her six-limbed arachnid form allowed her to tend multiple patients simultaneously, while her compound eyes tracked the various monitoring displays that showed her patients' conditions. Nerve damage to Cadet Mordoon's upper appendage is temporary, but significant, she reported to the gathered instructors. The energy blast disrupted his neural pathways at precisely the point where maximum disruption could be achieved with minimum permanent damage. The precision required for such a strike suggests either incredible luck or detailed knowledge of hexapod anatomy. Commander Zethkar stood with his forearms crossed, his expression troubled as he watched the medical team's work. What about the others? Cadet Velthar has a mild concussion from his fall, nothing more. Cadet Quinra shows signs of phase disruption, trauma, a condition I have never seen before today. Her crystalline matrix is unstable but recovering. The others have various injuries consistent with weapons fire, but all will recover fully within days. And the human cadet? Cadet Lee Hyun shows no signs of injury, fatigue, or stress. His vital signs throughout the entire incident remained within normal parameters for a human at rest. I have run every test available to me, and I can find no explanation for his performance other than that it represents normal human capability. The commander's scaled features twisted with confusion. That cannot be correct. No individual of any species should be able to defeat 6 trained opponents simultaneously unless they possess significant physical or technological advantages. Yet the evidence is undeniable, Dr. Yethmore replied. I have also discovered something else that concerns me greatly. The weapons used in today's exercise were not operating at training levels. A malfunction in the safety systems caused all weapons to function at full combat effectiveness. Every energy blast fired today was potentially lethal. A shocked silence filled the medical center as the implications of this revelation sank in. What everyone had witnessed was not an impressive training exercise, but actual combat in which lives had been at stake. The precision with which Hyun had disabled his opponents took on an entirely different meaning when viewed in this context. He had not simply defeated them, he had done so while ensuring that none of them would die. I want the human cadet brought here immediately, Zethkar ordered. And contact Earth Command. We need answers. Hyun arrived at the medical center 20 minutes later, accompanied by Park Mina, who had refused to leave his side since the exercise ended. He moved with the same calm, measured pace that characterized all his actions, showing no signs of the stress or excitement that would have been expected from someone who had just survived a life-threatening encounter. Cadet Lee, Dr. Yethmore, began, her multiple eyes focusing on him with scientific interest. I need to ask you some questions about today's events. Were you aware that the weapons were malfunctioning? Yes, Hyun replied simply. When did you become aware of this? Approximately 4 minutes into the exercise, when I observed that Skrita's shot caused structural damage to a barrier wall. Training weapons do not have sufficient power to create such effects. Commander Zethkar stepped forward, his imposing frame radiating authority. If you knew the weapons were dangerous, why did you not report this immediately? I attempted to communicate the information to my team members and suggested they take additional precautions. However, Team Alpha had already begun their aggressive sweep, and stopping the exercise at that point would have required overriding their communication jamming efforts. You mean you fought that entire battle knowing that every shot could have killed you? Yes, Commander. The medical center fell silent again as the full weight of this admission settled over everyone present. The human cadet had not only survived a 6-against-1 fight with lethal weapons, he had done so while deliberately ensuring that his opponents remained alive, despite their clear intention to cause him serious harm. How? Dr. Yethmore asked, quietly. How is any of what you did today possible? Before Hyun could answer, the medical center's communication system activated, and a new voice filled the room. That is an excellent question, Doctor, and one that I believe I can help answer. A holographic projection materialized in the center of the room, showing the image of a middle-aged human male in the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. His features were calm and professional, but there was something in his eyes that suggested depths of knowledge that few beings ever glimpsed. "I am Dr. Kim Tae-ho, Earth's military attaché to the Galactic Council," the projection continued. "I have been monitoring the situation at your academy and am prepared to provide some context for today's events, with the understanding that this information is classified at the highest levels of galactic security." Commander Zethkar's forearms flexed with tension. "Dr. Kim, what exactly has your species been hiding from the galactic community?" Dr. Kim's expression remained neutral, but a slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "We have not been hiding anything, Commander. We have simply been allowing others to see what they expected to see. The galactic community wanted to believe that humans were physically weak, but intellectually useful, so we have played that role for the past 50 years. You mean you have been deliberately underperforming in military exercises?" "Not underperforming, exactly. We have been performing at levels that would not cause concern or suspicion among our allies. Our military academies on Earth have spent decades developing training protocols that allow our soldiers to maintain their full capabilities while appearing to struggle in controlled environments." Park Mina found her voice first among the stunned audience. "But why? Why would you want others to think humans are weak?" Dr. Kim's smile became more pronounced. "Tell me, Cadet Park, in all your years at the Academy, have any of the other species shown fear or suspicion toward humans? Have they treated you as a potential threat or rival?" "No," she admitted. "Most of them barely notice us except when they need technical support or strategic planning." "Exactly. Humans learned long ago that there are advantages to being underestimated. When others do not see you as a threat, they do not prepare defenses against you. They do not study your weaknesses or develop countermeasures for your strengths. They simply dismiss you as unimportant." Commander Zethkar's voice carried a note of something that might have been apprehension. "Are you saying that all humans are capable of what Cadet Lee demonstrated today?" "I am saying that what you witnessed today represents baseline human combat capability when environmental constraints are removed. Cadet Lee is neither exceptional nor enhanced by human standards. He is simply a normally trained human soldier operating at standard efficiency." The implications of this statement sent ripples of shock through the gathered beings. If a normal human could defeat 6 elite alien warriors simultaneously, what did that say about humanity's true military potential? Dr. Yethmore approached, the holographic projection, her scientific curiosity overriding her shock. The physiological requirements for such performance should be impossible for a species that evolved on a moderate gravity world with relatively few large predators. An understandable assumption, Doctor, but based on incomplete information about human evolutionary pressures. Earth is not the peaceful, moderate world that our diplomatic profiles suggest. Our species evolved in constant competition with megafauna that possessed advantages similar to those of our current galactic allies: greater size, natural armor, superior strength, enhanced senses. The projection gestured toward Hyun, who stood quietly listening to the conversation with no apparent surprise at these revelations. Humans survived not by becoming stronger or more armored than our predators, but by developing pattern recognition, tactical thinking, and stress response capabilities that allowed small groups to defeat much larger and more powerful opponents. Stress response capabilities? Dr. Yethmore asked. What your species might call hysterical strength, the ability to temporarily exceed normal physical limitations when survival is threatened, combined with enhanced adrenaline response, advanced spatial reasoning, and what we call combat prescience, the ability to predict opponent actions based on minimal sensory input. Commander Zethkar was beginning to understand the full scope of what had been hidden from the galactic community. How many humans possess these abilities? All of them to varying degrees. The training that Cadet Lee received is standard for all humans entering galactic service. We simply teach our people to suppress their natural responses in non-threatening situations. And what constitutes a threatening situation? Dr. Kim's expression became more serious. When human lives are in immediate danger from hostile action, when those we have sworn to protect are under attack, when the stakes are real rather than simulated. The medical center fell's 3 weeks had passed since the incident in the combat dome, and the Galactic Military Academy had become a very different place. The hallways that once echoed with casual dismissal of human capabilities now carried conversations conducted in hushed, respectful tones whenever the small group of human cadets passed by. The change in atmosphere was so complete that even the newest arrivals from distant worlds could sense that something fundamental had shifted in the Academy's social structure. Yoon sat in the same back corner of the combat theory classroom, but now he found himself the center of attention rather than an ignored presence. Cadets who had never bothered to learn his name now studied his every movement, hoping to understand some secret of human combat effectiveness. The irony was not lost on him that his quiet nature, once seen as evidence of weakness, was now interpreted as mysterious and potentially dangerous. Commander Zethkar stood before the same holographic display he had used weeks earlier, but his lesson plan had been completely revised in light of recent revelations. Instead of discussing human support roles and limitations, today's class focused on the tactical applications of misdirection and the strategic value of controlling enemy perceptions. The Battle of Kepler Station, he announced, manipulating the display to show a complex space engagement, has been reanalyzed by our tactical experts. What was previously understood as a desperate last stand by an outnumbered human fleet has been reclassified as a carefully orchestrated trap that eliminated a superior enemy force while appearing to be on the brink of defeat. Velthar, who had returned to classes with his arm still in a regeneration brace, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Krillian cadet had spent the past 3 weeks struggling to reconcile his species' warrior pride with the knowledge that he had been easily defeated by an opponent he had grossly underestimated. The enemy force consisted of heavily armored battlecruisers with superior firepower and shielding. Zethkar continued. Standard tactical doctrine suggested that the human vessels should have been destroyed within minutes. Instead, the engagement lasted for 6 hours and ended with complete enemy annihilation and minimal human casualties. Quinra raised one crystalline appendage. Commander, if humans possessed such tactical superiority, why did they allow the engagement to appear so desperate? Would it not have been more effective to demonstrate their strength immediately? Excellent question, Cadet Quinra. The answer illustrates a fundamental principle of human strategic thinking, the value of information warfare. By appearing to be losing while actually controlling the engagement, the human fleet caused their enemies to commit resources carelessly and reveal weaknesses that could be exploited. The commander's 4 eyes found Hyun in the back of the classroom. Cadet Lee, would you care to elaborate on this concept? For a moment, the old pattern reasserted itself as every head in the classroom turned toward the quiet human figure. But now the attention carried weight and expectation rather than casual dismissal. Information is more valuable than firepower, Hyun said in his usual calm tone. An enemy who believes they are winning will continue to use the same tactics that brought them to that position. An enemy who believes they are losing will adapt and become more dangerous. By controlling what the enemy believes about their own situation, you control their decision-making process. And how does this principle apply beyond space combat? Zethkar asked. It applies to any situation where perception shapes behavior. If others see you as weak, they will not take precautions against your true capabilities. If they see you as strong, they will prepare countermeasures that reduce your actual effectiveness. Morden, whose 4 arms had regained full function, but whose confidence remained shattered, spoke without raising his hand. So humans have been deliberately deceiving the entire galactic community for 50 years? Not deceiving, Hyun corrected gently, allowing others to reach the conclusions they were most comfortable with. The information about human capabilities has always been available to anyone who cared to look closely enough. After class ended, Yoon found himself surrounded by a small group of alien cadets who had never approached him before. Their questions came rapidly, revealing how completely their understanding of human nature had been transformed. Is it true that all humans can fight like you did? Asked Nethira, a delicate-looking cadet from the Crystal Worlds. Are there human military units already deployed throughout the galaxy that we do not know about? Added Costel, his insectoid features showing obvious anxiety. How many of your species' capabilities remain hidden from us? Demanded Raxhul, a warrior from the Iron Worlds whose entire culture was built around the concept of strength through direct confrontation. Hyun listened patiently to their questions before responding. You are asking the wrong questions, he said quietly. The right question is not what humans can do, but what we choose to do with our capabilities. Before anyone could ask what he meant by that, Park Mina appeared at his elbow, carrying a communication pad that displayed an official message seal. Hyun, you have been requested in the commander's office immediately. Dr. Kim has arrived for his follow-up meetings. They walked together through corridors that now seemed apart before them, other cadets stepping aside with a mixture of respect and wariness that neither human found comfortable. The change in their social status had happened too quickly for easy adjustment. Do you regret it? Mina asked as they approached the administrative section. Revealing what you could do? I did not reveal anything, Hyun replied. I simply responded to a situation that required response. The revelation came from others drawing conclusions based on incomplete assumptions. But now everything is different. They look at us like we are dangerous. We are dangerous. We have always been dangerous. The difference is that now they know it. The commander's office had been expanded with additional chairs and communication equipment to accommodate the high-level meetings that had been ongoing since Dr. Kim's arrival. The Earth diplomat sat across from Commander Zethkar and several other senior instructors, while Captain Yoon Daisu, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, participated via holographic link. Cadet Lee, Dr. Kim said as Hyun entered the room, please sit down. We have been discussing the implications of recent events, and your perspective would be valuable. Captain Yoon's holographic image turned toward Hyun with an expression of professional interest. Cadet, I have been reviewing the combat footage from your exercise. Your restraint in that situation was remarkable, but I need to understand your assessment of the threat level you were facing. The threat level was significant, but not extreme, Hyun replied. My opponents were skilled but overconfident, and their coordination broke down once their initial assumptions proved incorrect. The lethal nature of the weapons required careful targeting to ensure disabling hits rather than fatal ones. And if the situation had been truly extreme? If your opponents had been actual enemies rather than fellow cadets? Hyun was quiet for a moment, and something shifted in his expression that made several of the alien instructors shift uncomfortably in their seats. Then the engagement would have lasted approximately 2 breaths instead of 5, and none of them would have survived. The stark simplicity of this statement hung in the air like a challenge to everything the non-human officers thought they understood about combat dynamics. Commander Zethkar spoke carefully. Cadet Lee, are you saying that you were deliberately prolonging the engagement to avoid casualties? I was using the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat while preserving life. This is standard protocol for human military personnel. When dealing with allies who have become temporarily hostile, due to misunderstanding or malfunction, Captain Yoon leaned forward in his holographic representation. The Galactic Council has requested a demonstration of standard human combat capabilities for their Military Assessment Committee. Would you be willing to participate in such a demonstration? If ordered to do so, yes, sir, Dr. Kim interjected smoothly. That will not be necessary, Captain. I believe the Academy footage provides sufficient documentation of human baseline capabilities. More importantly, we need to discuss the diplomatic implications of these revelations. He turned to address the alien instructors directly. Gentlemen, the galactic community now knows that humanity possesses significantly greater military potential than previously understood. This knowledge will inevitably change our relationships with other species, and we must ensure that these changes strengthen rather than destabilize the existing alliance structure. Commander Zethkar's scaled features showed concern. Dr. Kim, many species are already expressing anxiety about human intentions. There are questions about whether your people have been preparing for eventual conflict with your allies. A natural concern, Dr. Kim acknowledged, but based on a fundamental, misunderstanding of human nature. We did not develop our capabilities in preparation for war with our allies. We developed them over millions of years of evolution on a world where survival required constant vigilance against threats. And now that those threats no longer exist, those capabilities serve a different purpose, Captain Yoon answered. The protection element, as everyone present realized, the